Here's my impression of a Cuban woman seeing the ice sculptures in Quebec for the first time. There's a lot of ice in Quebec. It's the North Pole. So the Cuban woman is seeing snow for the first time. And she's my mother, by the way, and it's 1961, and we just come from Cuba, which is considerably hotter than Quebec. Not just the climate and the people, of course, but the politics at that time were very heated. Later that year, they almost started World War III, which would have warmed up the entire world, I imagine. But we escaped all that, and we came to Washington, D.C., but legally, you have to apply for residency in the United States from another country. So we took a trip to Canada. So there was my father and my mother with 2 kids. I was 3, my sister was 2. And we're walking through the snow, which took a lot of courage, by the way. Not just the winter in Quebec, but leaving everything we knew behind to come to live in a foreign country. Americans think that everybody would come here if they could, but that's not true. Most people want to stay home. Most people choose what they know rather than take a chance on what they don't. But I'm glad that my parents weren't like most people. Not that it was easy, America took some getting used to. Language was a problem. My father used to always like to tell the story of his first job interview in the United States. He had been a graphic artist in Cuba, and so when he got here, he took his portfolio right to McCann Erickson, one of the biggest ad agencies in Madison Avenue, and the way he tells the story, he went up to the secretary or the receptionist and said, you, me, job. So they put him in, had him wait in the lobby, and when he was in the lobby, he looked up, and there was one of his ads from Cuba framed on the wall. So he got a job. and then, but he had problems with his language forever, his whole life. Here's an example of a conversation he had 30 years, after being here 30 years. It was at my wedding, and my wife is from North Carolina, and I overheard a conversation between her Uncle Jimmy and my father. And Uncle Jimmy said to him, "Well, that was just about the most beautiful wedding I ever did see." And my father said, "What?" So that was the nature of his interactions very often. And I had trouble too. The worst moment for me was the first day of kindergarten. Now, I had already learned English from the Three Stooges on TV, so even though I called people numbskulls and palookas, I had mastered the language. So I was ready to fit right in with the American kids. But the first thing I noticed when I walked into class was that I was the only one without freckles. All American kids had dots all over their faces, and at least on their noses, and I was this olive-skinned, freckless freak. So, okay, I couldn't fit in physically, so I would have to rely on my brains and my talent. But within a few minutes, I felt like an idiot, because all these American kids, they looked like they already knew how to do everything, like they were professional kindergartners or something. And especially the girls, they were so fast and smart, and I didn't learn until many years later that boys are stupid at that age. And I thought it was just me. But then the teacher said, "All right, it's time to paint." And I knew I had it made. See, I was a great artist. I had just finished a series of watercolors of triceratops and whales with many feet on them that had won me much acclaim at home. So this was my time to shine. So the teacher laid out paper on the tables and these jugs of paint, and she said, "Start painting, children." And then all these freckled kids, they stuck their hands in the paint, and they started smearing it all over the paper. And I said, what is this? And I asked the teacher for a paintbrush, and she said, "It's finger painting." What? How can you make an accurate representation of a primeval herbivore or whales with many feet without a paintbrush? And the answer is you can't. I tried. I stuck my finger in the paint, and I tried to it was a mess. And then kids just bashed me out of the way and smeared everything I did with paint, and just as well, the work was inferior. And then the teacher said it was snack time. Okay, good, good, good. I'll get a little food, relax, regroup. So they gave us all milk and crackers. And in those days, the milk came in these triangular cartons with paper straws. And so I would watch the kid opposite me, this redhead kid, and he stabbed his carton with a straw, and he started sucking up milk. And his cheeks became these two big freckled balloons, and the milk was running down his chin, and I thought, this must be great, you know? So I did the same thing. I did that, and I took a big sip, and I gagged. I had never had milk without sugar in it. And yeah, I know, there's lots of sugar in Cuba, but there's plenty of sugar in the United States, too. All right, there was no excuse for that abuse. And then the teacher said, it was nap time. Nap? I just had an espresso for breakfast. You know, there was no way I was getting to sleep at 11 a.m. And then the ultimate insult. The teacher commanded everyone to take out the mats you brought from home. My stupid immigrant mother had forgotten to give me a mat. The teacher had to put down an old towel, and there was this little sad little brown towel boy surrounded by all these golden-haired American children in their luxurious mats. And they were all snoring within minutes. And I shut my eyes, and I tried so hard to sleep, and nothing. I didn't sleep 1 second the whole year. I hit rock bottom in kindergarten. Gotten better since then. Yeah, no. It turned out my mother wasn't that stupid. She got me a mat, and she kept me alive. And my father got work, and my sister became an artist like he was. And although I never acquired a taste for sugarless milk, I have had a few naps since kindergarten. And I learned how to fit in. And I know fitting in is kind of frowned upon these days. We're all supposed to think different and have it your way and be yourself, which are just ad slogans, really. But having to fit into a new culture taught me to really look at people and try to understand them. And that skill served me well all my life. And it helped me get dates. But there's one thing I never got used to, one thing that no hot-blooded Cuban likes. Right. Here's my impression of my mother, true impression of her walking through the snow for the first time in her life amidst the lovely ice sculptures of Quebec.